We now have 30 First Nations on Lower Fraser. That's virtually everyone. People in a department and other folks in BC see this organization as a force to be reckoned with. It's not any longer go talk to this band or go talk to that band. They talk to the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance. The organization is growing. Folks on the watershed, Lower Fraser, have a place to go for information. They know that they have somebody that they can call to ask for information. They have somewhere to go, and I think it's beneficial for all of us.
How do we share sockeye in particular in years when the runs are challenged, when there's poor returns of sockeye salmon? How do we as First Nations address ourselves to how these fish will be shared between and amongst the First Nations, how the fisheries will be conducted, and the like? That's what it's allowed us to do as the LFFA when we reach outside the boundaries of the Lower Fraser. That's the kind of activity, one kind of activity that we've involved ourselves in. And it's beginning to take root now, and it's beginning to show its benefits, not only for First Nations on the Lower Fraser, but other First Nations outside this immediate area here.
In modern fisheries management, especially around salmon and the migratory route of salmon, there are a lot of First Nations who have rights and title to those fish. And so LFFA or the Lower Fraser First Nations can't operate in a silo by themselves. They must coordinate their efforts with the marine people who have Fraser River sockeye traveling through their traditional territories all up along the marine, and then they must coordinate their work with all of the other First Nations whose homes and their traditional territories include Fraser River salmon. Together, they also have to set up the structures that they're going to do, and so people like Roadmap and FRAS are trying to look at the broader structures that need to be put in place so we can work collectively on watershed issues and broader issues that affect the salmon.
What's really effective is for First Nations that don't have the capacity at the local level to be able to have a resource available to them to analyze the scientific or technical data that they can't do at their local level, and B, to come together, digest the information, and then talk about how they see those positions formulating based on that data. So I think it's a really great opportunity and a great resource for First Nations to have the LFFA there to do those things for them.
I think that fishing's always been important to our communities. I think that if there's one thing that really holds us together, it is the fishing, and knowing that we need that food, social, and ceremonial to help us thrive in life. So I really believe that it is the fish itself that's holding us together.
Fishing is an important way for our family to be together, to learn our culture, our traditions. The kids love it at the river, and they learn really young how to fish, how to set nets, how to drift. Of course, they're not doing it, they know how to hang nets. And most of them are taught by my dad, their grandpa. There aren't many set net spots here in Chiam, so for our family, we all drift.
Our people weren't allowed to drift fish, but with the challenges that we've done with DFO, like they've recognized that because of the river change and the population growth of our people, they needed to let us fish in our preferred methods. And years ago, our people used to drift fish before. They used to fish with what they called a bag net. And they used 2 canoes, and they had a square net made where they drifted down and they caught the fish. But today we use the gill nets stretched out over the water, but it's the same method. It's drifting, but a single boat.
This is drift fishing. We are in what they call sub-area 4 on the license from DFO. It's a food, social, ceremonial fishery. We haven't had any sales this year due to the low stock return. This is a net, we're using sockeye gear. We use a 5.5-inch net here, 50 fathoms long, which is about 300 feet, and 60 meshes deep. Most of our boats here are using the same type of gear, although some will try to change up and go with a spring gear. They'll try to catch springs because there seems to be an abundance of spring salmon right now. So we have about usually 12 boats out. We fish through here in the summer and the fall, springtime too for springs. Start in April with the Ulican if we get a shot at the Ulican. It's a good place to fish. We intercept a lot of stocks here. Must be over 150 stocks we can touch here.
And when I was in my teens, my late teens, I started drift fishing, not here, but commercially down Port Mann and Fort Langley. And but it was still, we still did the handwork, but there were long nets down there. The fishing down there is a little bit different because it gives you a little more time to work with your nets. But here, the water's moving a lot faster, and your drift sections are shorter, so you have to work faster.
Drifting to me is a good way for us because everybody takes turns. Everybody gets a chance. We all write out a list, and we follow the list. For our family, we all drift. There are some set net spots, but not many. And it's important that we're able to keep practicing our rate. And that's how we have to do it.
I've been arrested about over 50 times. Now I'm 81 years old right now. And I've spent a lifetime doing what I do, trying to manage our resource and try to bring our recovery of our salmon.
This place here is pretty interesting. Our people call this place Lffa. Basically it means the resting area. Fish come in here to rest, and that's how come it's such a good fishing spot. We're just checking the net now for the first time. We set it out last night about 6 o'clock. We just tie up on the rocks here, and we set out and we put a anchor on the end, hold it. This net is 60 mesh deep, so it's about 18 feet deep. The so-called food fishery, that is our #1 priority every year. And every year we want to try and make sure that everyone has fish. We have to fight pretty hard to get licenses to try and fill that need, because there's a lot of folks that can't fish or don't know how to fish, or they don't have a boat, they don't have a fishing spot. There's only a limited amount of fishing sites on the Fraser, and so some folks we go out and catch fish so that we can give them fish. At Chiachton this last week they had a canning session. They were canning salmon. There's folks there coming in and canning fish, and otherwise they wouldn't have had any.
The fishermen set the net. These were caught by set net. So the net's set, and then they have to check the net, of course, take the fish off, right? Bring them in, put them on ice, and then bring them here. Our set nets are 200 feet, and they're set from shore. When you set, your spot might not be as good as it was last year because snags might have rolled in. So we have our challenges there. We process them. We have the people gutting them, and then I fillet them, and then we have the girls jarring. So they measure the jars and put the certain amount of fish into the jars.
And then what we do is we add just barely a quarter a teaspoon of salt. Then our next goal is to wipe down the rims of the jars. The seal sat in water for 5 minutes, and Melissa's now putting them on. This next part is very important as well. When you put the rims on to the jars, it's finger tight only. And I found out the hard way that that's very important. You can't tighten them too much. That impacts the way the jar seals. So what Melissa's going to do now is she's going to take it over to the pressure cooker that has about 2 inches of water at the bottom of the pressure cooker. This is what helps build up the pressure. So she put 7 jars on the lower level, and then there's a metal divider, and you can fit 7 more in. So once we actually get it in there and get the lid on, we need to build up the pressure. So there's a little blowhole, so it'll have to blow through that hole for 7 minutes, and then we build the pressure up to 10 pounds. So once it actually gets to 10 pounds, it's 110 minutes. And once the 110 minutes is up, we'll shut the burner off, and then we have to allow the pressure to go back down to 0 before we can even think about opening up the pressure cooker. Once that happens, we take the jars out and we sit them on the counter, cover them with a towel, and they sit there and seal.
The process takes so long, getting things ready, getting the jars clean, buying the jars. We got 1 set done yesterday, which is 5 fish. We try not to waste any of it. And then with the remains, with the insides, we take them back to the river and the sturgeons get them, so they're getting used all the way around. We don't believe in wasting our fish.
If we're together, we're powerful.
In the past, trying to work by ourselves, it has never really worked well, especially when it's coming, talking to DFO one-on-one. It had never worked because our community has always been a commercial fishery community, and especially right now, when we're dealing with our food fishery, it's more important to our people these days than it used to be in the past.
We can't forget that our communities have more localized interests for participation in fisheries management, looking after particular runs of fish. But because these communities are small and may not have the capacity themselves to address their specific interests on a particular tributary to the Fraser that has a population of fish that they're interested in protecting or rebuilding, they'll only be able to do that if they rise up and meet the challenge and to learn to reach outside of their community where they can find this capacity. And that capacity is developing in the LFFA.
The current organization of the LFFA, including the executive committee and the executive staff, as well as the technical support from people like myself and 1 or 2 others, is used by the communities to help them understand and interpret some of the information that they're given by the agencies that manage the resource, and to see how they can fit in or to those management plans, and to see where they can't fit in and provide some advice as to how they might adjust them to be more suitable.
Having a dedicated First Nation biologist has allowed the work that is presented by the department to be reviewed and explained in terms that everybody can understand. The First Nation biologist can also spend more time in explaining the details of some of the technical work and how it relates to the First Nations themselves. The technical capacity and understanding of the many First Nations has increased since the First Nations biologist has been engaged.
We've been at this for a long time, and at the Fraser River Aboriginal Fisheries Secretariat we have an executive committee, and that executive committee includes First Nations from the Lower Fraser, the Middle Fraser, and the Upper Fraser, but it also includes 2 folks from DFO. And the reason that we did that was because we decided that it was easier to have them on the executive committee working with us to plan than it is to sit and wonder what's going through their minds. What are they thinking? What does DFO want?
Well, it's improved a lot. It's more on a, not just them and us. It seems like now, I think these days, they're more cooperative, and I think, when one side cooperates, the other will cooperate better. Then there's more dialogue and there's more communication, and it's a more looking after the salmon too, but it's native people helping look after one another.
The Lower Fraser is such a dynamic fishery. Not only are there many First Nations, but there are other groups like the recreational fishery and the commercial fishery. We're building capacity. We got some techs, we got some managers, and most important of all, we have quite a large number of chiefs who can deal with fish.
Most of the time we fish all together, but when it comes to economic fisheries, we have separate CFAs, comprehensive fisheries agreements, and it helps for us to coordinate a time when they'll have more access to the river than we do at sometimes, and vice versa. It helps because DFO don't have to go back and forth and ask one community at a time. It's better having a body of people at once and trying to do some kind of consensus.
Within the information the department receives, the information now has the support and capacity of technical expertise that represent the First Nation organizations in the Lower Fraser River.
Collaborating with the groups there are biologists there and myself. We can bring together and bring more to bear on some of the problems than they can on their own, or certainly that we could.
Working with DFO, with the Lower Fraser Fishery Alliance groups, and First Nations, we have come actually a long way. We've all come back together and became a stronger unit. And I'm hopeful that I think we need to keep on with this progress, because we need to address a lot of the issues that are outstanding from past and bring it up to today's standards.
We've been able to speak with one voice for the last 35 years, and we're probably 100 years too late. The salmon are gone now, and poison's here, and our problems are getting worse. There's more people moving in.
Right now they're just walking down the net, the beach seine net. He's going to toss the rope into the guys, and they're going to seal off the fish that are in there, in the loop. And the reason why they're doing it this way, it's a selective fishery. What they're doing is they're fishing for chum salmon, but there's also springs, which are Chinook and coho and steelhead. Those are the non-target species, so this way they can release them unharmed. This is 2 crews right here. Some of the guys do it with 5 guys. It's a lot tougher on the body, but it's bigger payday for them. Each team will have a crew captain or a crew leader, and it's up to him to make sure that they release the non-targeted species right away. See them pulling the lead line in the bottom of the net? They want to get the bottom of the net pulled in so that keeps them all in a loop. And the guys are coming out on the outside to make sure that the cork line stays above. Because if there's lots and once a few go over the cork line, then they just all follow.
This is the buyer coming in here, and they'll take those and throw it into his boat. They're only allowed to take the chum.
So during the fishery, you'll see the punts out by the beach seiners, and some of the punts come to this station here, and what they do is they unload the punts with these totes of fish, and they'll just stockpile them here until they get enough for a load on their semi-trailers. They have a monitor up there. She has to keep account of the cohos that are released and the springs, and she's also got to keep account of how many females and how many males, because the price is different for the females and the males. See, there's so many guys throwing fish right now, but every time they're throwing, they're saying female or male.
Dry rock fishery is one of our ancient things that we do. We've been doing it for a long time. It's really family-based, family-oriented, based off the family fishing spots and family dry rock sites. And it's about preserving fish in a traditional way and for traditional uses as well. Each family might do it a little bit differently, but overall it's very, very much similar. It's not identical, but it's very much similar. In my family's case, like growing up and all through my young adulthood, we'd go out 1st of July every year and start to dry rock. And we'd always have 2 to 3 weeks for dry rock only before the other food fishery opened up. So we'd pack up camp, move out of home, move up to fish camp for the whole summers, fix up our dry rock if necessary, because it does weather over the years. We set the net as close to the dry rock as we can, because we want the salmon to be as fresh as possible. Our dry rock is located about 100 feet from where our mum grew up as a youngster. The power of place is important for us. We could dry elsewhere, but that place is important to us based on our mom's relationship to that set piece of land.
Preparing dry fish is kind of like a ceremony, and when we have the fish, it's a real delicacy. The dry rack fishery is so important to everybody that I don't know what would happen if we did not have that fishery. That's certainly probably the oldest fishery, one of the oldest on the river. Of course, we have lots of evidence of our people living on the banks of the Fraser River drying fish. It's better to catch the fish when it's, take the fish off the net when it's alive, and immediately drain the blood out of the fish. Then from there, the fish is filleted, cut down the back, and is spread out on the table more like a butterfly. From there, you cut strips across the fish, not lengthways with the fish, but across the fish. And the reason for this is for the wind to, I guess, be able to pass through them strips on the fish when it's on the dry rack. You stretch the fish so that the strips are kind of spread apart. You get some sticks put on the back of the fish to keep the fish spread out into the wind. In some cases, at our site, we use nut sticks, where one part of the stick is kind of like a slingshot, then you split the other end and you make a little hole on each edge of the fish. And that keeps the fish spread apart so the wind can get at it. You put it up high in the dry rack on a pole so the bears can't get it, or the crows. Every part of that fish has to catch the wind, and that's why it's a warm, dry wind that dehydrates the fish. Therefore, then you're able to, then it's cured, and then you can put it away for the winter. The tradition is, of course, to pass that knowledge down to the younger ones, and there's many times when you see that practice occur, like you see a small child working with a grandparent, the professional, and of course the young ones learning how to cut fish and dry the fish and look after the fish.
Going back not that many generations, the canyon was absolutely full of dry racks, wall-to-wall dry racks on both sides of the river. It's not the case now. Yet a number of those families that traditionally would have been in the canyon every summer, those families are still here today. They've just disconnected from that piece of the fishery. So I think we need to look at it in that context as well, as to reintroduce the dry rack to those families that aren't currently doing it. So that eventually we build the numbers of dry racks in the canyon, we build the numbers of people and families and communities that are benefiting from the dry rack fishery. The Lower Fraser Fishery Alliance allows us to have a voice and influence other areas of the river. The dry rack fishery has always had a special relationship with the early Stuart sockeye, and that brings in, folks upriver. So the structure and the voice and the conversation tables that the LFFA has creates a common understanding amongst other First Nations as well. It's important that others hear about it and that they're aware of it, so when the numbers are reduced in a given year, other First Nations are willing and able to pull their nets out of the water while the early Stuart goes by, just to make sure that we get the numbers that suit our needs, and as importantly, that the carrier secondly get the numbers up at the headwaters that they need.
20 years ago, we were clubbing each other in the river, hitting each other with paddles and fighting, physically fighting.
Here on the lower river, we were in pitched battle with sport fishing interests. People were throwing rocks at one another, hurling insults, throwing beer cans at one another. In fact, it came to the point in the conflict where sports fishermen were shooting at First Nations people.
Conflict costs, and if we can find ways of working together, the salmon will benefit.
We've tried in the past, before the advent of the LFFA, to work with sport fishing interests and conservation groups and others, commercial fishing interests. We tried, but it was ad hoc in its approach. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't something that we maintained. But with the advent of the LFFA, the creation of the LFFA, we're able to sustain a conversation with other interests in the fishery here on the Lower Fraser River. And through the auspices of the LFFA and our commitment to working at the Tier 3 level, which is First Nations working with other interests, sport fishing interests, commercial fishing interests, green groups, or conservationists, if you will be able to dig more deeply into the issues that we have in common and share with those interests, so that on the one hand we reduce conflict, and on the other hand we develop more cooperative, collaborative relationships with other interests in the fishery.
The Peacemakers, the membership includes First Nations people, includes people from the recreation community, Fraser Valley Salmon Table, and also we have a liaison with DFO and the RCMP as well. And our objective is to be able to highlight the working relationship that we've established over the last 3 years and hopefully defuse some of the potential conflicts before they happen. We've had people in both communities drowned, as you know, in the past. And we have to establish some river safety methods, wearing PDFs, etc., proper weighting procedure for river anglers, etc. And of course, the other part of today's festival is to be able to demonstrate to the public and highlight this working relationship which has evolved into the Peacemakers.
I think that's an admirable thing to do, the collaboration and cooperation for people living in the area, and the respect that they have for one another, but also a better understanding of the First Nations peoples in the area and how their hospitality has been extended, and how we can work together to further the relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. I think it's very important that people understand and respect water, whether it's a 2-inch pool in the backyard or the Fraser River as it flows, probably around 14, 16 knots. Maybe a little bit, or might be a little bit high on that, but it is definitely a way of understanding one another and messaging, and it's good to see that the RCMP are here, sports fishers, recreation fishers, as well as First Nations. And the demonstration of the barbecue, I think, is probably something that people will bring home and try themselves to taste the beautiful taste of the spring salmon that is being barbecued here. And it's good to see the young people as well as the elders here, because that's one of the things that we need to ensure that in all nationalities understand, that the young become the teachers, and that the wisdom of the elders is much needed with respect to the traditional scientific knowledge of the river and the fish, the salmon itself.
At Safety and Culture on the River today, I have an information booth for coded wire tag, which is embedded in Coho and Chinook. And I'm informing the public here on what LFFA's program is all about. I'm acting also as sort of like a liaison between the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the First Nations fishing on the river. We there's been some challenges in the past where there hasn't been a lot of communication, so we're bridging those gaps very quickly.
I think I'm hoping today's event is going to be a springboard, a catalyst to start coming up with solutions or working on solutions together to make the river a better place.
Through the last 100 years or so, the Indigenous people of British Columbia and Canada have been very much impacted by the effects of colonial governments and how people have been torn apart in their communities. And so many of the challenges come from that history, from the history of feeling that we have to compete against each other in order to get a piece of the pie. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is to rebuild the trust amongst the communities so that they know that working together benefits their communities rather than working on their own directly.
If we go challenge places, you know, a single band at a time, they always say, well, these guys are doing that and those guys are doing that, so you can't do this. But if all the bands get together and say we want to do this, then it's a challenge for them to say no, because we're all on the same mind that we want to do the same thing.
I think it will go a long way to influence policy change, and if not, there's definitely the approach that people can go political with that, talk about making changes to their local MLAs or their MPs to bring about change, and even to lobby government to change, and lobby even opposition members of parliament. So the more we start learning how to work together, and I think the LFFA is doing a great job in bringing people together in the Lower Fraser to bring united and unified positions. I think it all contributes to the big picture, and I think it's we've had a bit of a vacuum for a number of years, so it's great to see the capacity developing.
We live in the shadow of the Area E commercial gillnet fishery here, as well as the Albion test fishery over here right across the river from us, as well as the Wannock test fishery, which is not run by any First Nation yet, and maybe that's something we can do ourselves, because we need our own scientific knowledge, and we need to build our database somehow.
When you're managing a fishery, you got to make sure that when you have the responsibility for managing, conservation is there. Conservation of specific runs. In this case, conservation of the early Stewart salmon run.
I really think that there's a lot of growing room with Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I think that they really have to understand our food, social, and ceremonial much better before they can help control the other sectors and start saving the fish.
No one has really defined what is food, social, and ceremonial needs. We have a hard time with ceremonial because they're saying, well, basically they're saying, well, that's for funerals, eh? But it's not just for funerals. There's ceremonies that we conduct that we need to plan for, we need to have, and there's social needs. What are the social needs of a society? I think to make a living is a social need, right? To have an economy. In the Marshall case over in the Maritimes, that went to the Supreme Court of Canada. They said that they have a right for subsistence. They have a right to make a moderate living. That's what we want. We want to have a right to make a living.
The food fishery and an economic opportunity fishery, very important to us. Next, I would say that we have to deepen the relationship we have with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Right now, there's still lingering suspicions and tensions and issues that have gone unattended to for well over 100 years, and certainly these past 20 years that haven't been dealt with, that haven't been addressed yet. The LFFA offers us that opportunity as First Nations on the Lower Fraser River to get at some of those issues so that we can expand trust between and amongst our communities, and we can have a more trusting relationship between ourselves and the department.
Our working relationship has gotten better outside of the LFFA, just because people have our main word coming from the LFFA that we could present at different gatherings, if it was the United States or like something like Lummi or the people that fish down there, so that they know the things that we're all together on, and maybe we have our own little separate things that we do on our own, just because of where we live or what we do there. But it definitely helps for communications.
There are many, many conversations that must happen on a regular basis during the meeting season and during the fishing season. And so LFFA, I think, can play a key role in helping to facilitate better dialogue.
I would see the Lower Fraser First Nations are, I guess, in some years, they're one of the largest harvesters of the resource, and an organization like the LFFA is important in those circumstances to make sure that the communities can take their rightful role in managing their fisheries and their responsibilities, and to provide the communities with a way to peacefully and orderly exercise what they've been doing for thousands of years.
The main thing for us to sit at a table is knowing what everybody else is doing, and I think that's important for all the communities to know what everybody else is doing, because what everybody else is doing affects what you want to do here at home.
This Lffa group are concerned about management, and that's what makes this group work so well. They have good, strong leadership. They got some older guys who offer advice to the young leaders, and I can see this group, building, not only in size but in capacity, technical support, everything. And I see it being in place for a long, long time, if not generations into the future.
Family here is covering you and wrapping you up with their love and with their respect. Right now I'm going to need you to use your ears and your heart to listen to what we have on our mind as a family. And so, with that being said, we're going to call a few witnesses to witness the work that's going to take place here today.
Thank you for calling me as a witness in honoring the leaders here, carrying on the struggle with Canada, fighting for our rights and our rightful share of the resources in the river and in the ocean.
I'm here, and the people are here from Fisheries and Oceans because we understand the need to move forward together, because we understand the need to reinforce our relationship with you, because we very much appreciate the work that has been done here to reinforce your own relationships and to speak clearly with us, to tell us your stories, to tell us your interests, to tell us how it is you want to move forward. It makes all of our work look somewhat more hopeful for the future.
It's often the first steps that are the most dangerous and the most difficult to take again. And I know it's a long path, and I know you've been on that path for a long time, but those were and those are, and I will always remember all of you in this day as honoring you to take those first steps and work so hard in holding the vision of what we can do together.
We understand that the world is changing, but sometimes it changes too fast for us because we're not used to that pace. A lot of the things that go on in our territory is based on the teachings that have been handed down to us from our previous generations on how to look after the land and the resources, how to look after the fish, how to look after ourselves. So, in all our deliberations with the governments, we have to teach them about some of those things that are important to us. They may not understand it at all, but they have to get to a place where we can talk about it. Its importance to us, importance to our children, importance to our lives, importance to our ceremonies.
What we're trying to do is to build a good relationship with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. We've been adversaries for way too long. I think when it comes right down to it, we're here for the fish, and I think that our colleagues at DFO are here for the same reason.